Hello guys, I want to welcome you to my in-depth core meditation guardian PvP guide. So if you ever wanted to play like a light radiant warrior with heavy damage output and in my opinion the most epic skill names that Guild Wars 2 has to offer, then this build might be something for you. So I rarely do these kind of videos anymore because they take up a lot of time, but I played this build a lot lately and it's really fun. That's why I want to share this video with you. So the build we will be talking about today is taken from Meta Battle. It's called the Radiant Greatsword. I will link it in the description below, and I'm basically I didn't change much from it, nothing at all actually, and I really like the build and I want to explain to you how to play that build and what the mechanics that are embedded in that build are. So let's get right into it. This is the build. And first of all, I want to highlight the strengths and weaknesses of this overall build. So we have a pretty high sustain, high condition sustain, as I will show you later on because we are running a lot of meditations. We have a lot of retaliation and light aura upkeep, which is both offensive and defensive, and it's quite beginner friendly because we are not dealing with so many skills compared to, let's say, the elite specialization Firebrand, where we have to keep way more skills in the back of our head. And it's a free-to-play build, of course, because we are playing core. We don't need any of the expansion packs because it's not an elite specialization. Um, the weaknesses of this build are most of all boon removal enemies such as spellbreakers or weavers, because that's where most of your damage comes from the might stacks, etc. But also from the just um, power of the virtues, for example, just increases your damage potentially for each boon on you. So if those are stripped, that's a real bummer. And also you have, as you see, a pretty low health pool, which shouldn't scare you too much, but you have to be aware of it, of burst damage. But don't be scared, you really have a lot of sustain in that build hidden, and I will show you how to make use of that sustain. Also, range pressure can be a challenge, but you get used to that when you learn how to play the build itself. So the sustain comes mostly, as I said, from the strength, which is the retaliation upkeep, which is really nice. So you get retaliation on pretty much everything. You get 10 seconds on your healing skill. You get retaliation on any activation of any of your virtues. You deal increased damage when you have retaliation, and which retaliation is obviously reflecting incoming damage, so it's offensive and defensive in the same manner. But you also have quite a lot of light aura presence, which is also increasing your survivability because it first of all decreases incoming condition damage, but also when you hit, you gain additional retaliation, which is nice. So you get light aura directly from your Virtue of Justice, which gets refreshed every time you kill a foe. So you have to be aware of that to activate Virtue of Justice when you're about to finish one. But I will talk about the usage of all of these skills later on in more detail. But you can also use your light aura, your light combo fields with leap finishers to gain additional light auras, which is essential for this build, but more to that later. But the most basic sustain comes from your Valor trade line, where we want to focus on Monk's Focus, which aims at enhancing all your meditation skills. It gives it critical chance, reduced recharge, and a base healing. And as you can see, we are running a full set of meditation skills, and so we can exploit the most benefit from that. And that's also the basic idea. That's why it's a core meditation guardian build in the first place. Lastly, we have virtues. Here it's more, it just aims at maximizing the burst damage output, so you're really a burst damage dealer, and I will show you that burst damage combo in a minute. But as you can see here, it's all about increasing and also increasing your retaliation upkeep. Here, this is really important in Indomitable Courage. This adds stability and stun break to your Virtue of Courage, which is really important to get an additional stun break, but also helps you to deal out your burst damage without getting interrupted, and also helps you to stomp enemy people. Lastly, I want to briefly talk about the runes, the settings I'm running here. So it's really key that you're running Berserker Amulet just for the burst damage, and you can see that currently I have roughly 50% crit chance, but then you get Fury from all of them, so you have nearly 93, and then from your trade line, Radiant Power, so you have like 102%. When you're hitting here, you have 92 plus 10s and 100, nearly 103% critical hit chance against burning foes, which is huge. So you're basically critting all the time. Then for the Rune of the Lynx, this can be exchanged with, let's say, Rune of the Fighter, but I really like it because of the movement speed increase, which helps you a lot also for having fun with the build. Increasing mobility helps a lot. Then regarding the sigils, the most burst damage is gonna come when you're in your greatsword. That's why you have here the Sigil of Exposure, which gives you vulnerability stacks on the target, as well as the normal Sigils of Energy on both sets for the increased sustain, and here Sigil of Cleansing. But obviously you can switch this around. Just try to maximize your burst damage here with something like Sigil of Exposure. That's the only thing I can recommend. Don't try to run this without Berserker Amulet, because the whole point of this build is to really be burst intensive, and running a Marauder Amulet takes away a lot of that. So for the burst combo, I first want to show you some examples of the combo in action here in the 3v3 ranked arena. Here on a pretty tanky Tempest. And secondly on also again a Tempest. Check my conditions. I should have used Smite condition early on, but the damage was still pretty high. So now I want to show you the burst combo on a dummy, the perfect rotation, how it looks like, and afterwards I will show you in slow motion. We break it down, and I can show you some alternations to it as well. So it's pretty high damage, as you can see. We start out with Shield of Wrath, which detonates after 4 seconds, so do that first. Follow it up with Ray of Judgment for the tick damage. Switch to your Greatsword for Whirling Wrath, and just before the animation ends, teleport in with Judgment's Intervention with Virtue of Justice. You can also do Smite Condition for extra burst damage. Lay down your Symbol of Wrath and finish it off with a Leap of Faith to gain Light Aura and also be on the toes of your enemies, because they will probably run away after that. And that's pretty much the entire combo. Now I want to briefly discuss some alternations to this combo. Probably the most significant one is if you pop Virtue of Courage or not. So Virtue of Courage basically just adds aegis, stability and protection to your boon stack. Most important of these three is stability for many reasons. So you can Shadow Step, initiate your combo even when entering many people at once. You can make sure that you can dish out your damage without getting CC'd and interrupted. At the same time, passively, you gain plus 1% damage per boon, which is related to your build. And really important to note is that it automatically adds aegis to you, and aegis is really important because from your trade line you get plus 20% damage if you have aegis up. So that's
really important. If you notice before engaging with your burst combo that aegis is not up, really consider popping Virtue of Courage. But it's really an investment because you lose one of your most important stun breaks, but it can, in certain situations, really be worth it. Secondly, I want to show you or discuss if you should really pop, activate Smite Condition, so the other utility skill you have. If you have conditions on you or not, it will always dish out some burst, but normally I rather not pop it right away because I want to keep it for a dire situation or a situation where I really have those conditions on me. But if you notice that your target is really low, you can always activate it for that additional damage. Next up, I want to talk about how the sustain on the Core Guardian actually works. For that, I want to look first of all at your utility skills, which are the main instrument for your sustain, obviously. And so if you consider your health bar with your health percentage at any given time, your smite condition, the first utility skill here on the list, is your go-to tool. It has also the lowest cooldown with your trade line at around 16 seconds, and it is to be activated under moderate condi pressure, like roughly 3, because it removes 3 conditions, while also dealing damage. So it's both offensive and defensive, as you already saw in the burst combo itself. When you go lower in your HP, obviously we look at the actual healing scale of the Core Guardian in that meditation build, which should be activated fairly soon, sooner than on any other build, because you heal yourself while dealing damage. With the trade line, you also gain 10 seconds of retaliation, which is really nice, but just make sure that you activate this skill early enough that you can heal up. You should be able to fully, completely heal yourself with that. So all of these meditation skills, as already mentioned, have a base heal. And with the additional 25% life leech basically from your damage, you should be fairly easily able to fully heal. Then, when you get Condi bombed and you're really in trouble, then Contemplation of Purity is your lifesaver, and it makes you also really aggressive afterwards, because when you convert all of your conditions on you into boons, as you saw before, you gain also a huge damage buff. So activate this at roughly uh, above 5 conditions, that it's really worth it. It has a pretty high cooldown of, yeah, 36 seconds if I'm not mistaken. So use with care, but really powerful tool of any guardian. Lastly, your last resort is Renew Focus, your lead skill, which makes you invulnerable for 4 seconds. But what is also really important is that it renews and resets all your virtues. So make sure that you activate during the initialization of your lead skill all of your virtues, with Virtue of Purity, the healing skill, at the very last second, that you get the most of the passive heal during the channeling of that skill. That's really important. Obviously, after that, after doing your elite skill and after renewing your Virtue of Purity, you can activate it again if you're really in dire need again, to gain that additional burst heal if needed. So that's basically from the utility side, utility skill side, where that sustain comes from, and it should be obvious to you. And the real the real training comes from knowing when exactly to use which utility skill, when you should use smite condition over contemplation of purity and vice versa, when should you pop your heal to get that retaliation, and when is it too late. Make sure that you really don't pop your elite skill too early, but also not too late. People will know that you have your elite skill and will try to CC you, fear you, stun you, so that you cannot activate it. So be aware of that. Be ready to pop your Virtue of Courage for that stun break to go directly into your elite skill. The second important sustain for the core warrior comes from his interaction with combo fields, especially light combo fields. He can create those with two different skills. One of them is Symbol of Wrath, the second one Symbol of Blades, the second sword skill. And by interacting with different combo finishers inside of these combo fields, he can create benefits for himself or for his team. The most important one, in my opinion, is the leap finisher, which comes from Leap of Faith. Executed inside of a combo field or leaping inside of a combo field creates a light aura for yourself, which decreases the incoming condition damage by 10%. And while getting hit, while this aura is up, you gain retaliation. Secondly, the Whirl combo finisher, which can come from the combo finisher moves Whirling Wrath or Binding Blades, can result in cleansing bolts. Everybody that is hit by these bolts gets conditions cleansed from them. So this is, in my opinion, the second most important one because it happens rather often. The last combo finisher I want to cover here to make this list complete is the blast finisher, which can come from an unextinguished shield of wrath, which means that that the shield didn't get consumed and it explodes at the end. If the shield explodes inside of a light combo field, you will be doing area cleansing, which affects everybody in a specific radius around you and your teammates and yourself. Um, Combos and the interaction with combo fields in general is really important when you want to become good in Guild Wars 2 PvP, and I will link the wiki page in the description below for you to check out. The final and really last thing I want to cover in this guide is the mobility aspect of the core warrior, which is a little special in my opinion. So as I showed you before, I really like to go with the rune of the lynx, which gives me that flat 25% increase in movement speed, which makes this build for me way more playable and fun to play. But the mobility also comes from the skills of the core warrior, of course, which are mostly teleportation or shadow step skills. Um, Symbol of Blades from your Sword 2 ability teleports you directly to an enemy, which is also very good for vertical movement. Then you have the Leap of Faith from your Greatsword 3 skill, and you have the utility skill Judge's Intervention, which is a 1200 meter shadow step towards the target that does burning and stun break. And these are the mobility skills that really make the Guardian what the Guardian is, really being on the foe's toes and always putting pressure on them, which makes it really fun, even though the general movement speed and ability is mediocre to low. Lastly, I want to show you one nifty trick for Leap of Faith when you want to disengage really fast by executing Leap of Faith and directly weapon switching to cancel the animation and making you run away faster. I normally do this at the beginning of some conquest games when you go out of spawn, when you go down that gap, which is really helpful, but also for disengaging. And you can see it in the clip that I will be showing. So this is everything for that guide. I hope you got a good overview of what this class and this build in particular can do, and I hope you have fun with it. And let me know in the comments below if I missed something crucial or if you want to add something to some of the points I mentioned.